Welcome my dear students. Today we are going to talk about paper 5 of modern office practice and management, and we are going to cover the area on business regulatory framework, applicability of legislation and Sale of Goods Act. So let's start with the content of today's session. We'll try and have a look into the meaning of industrial dispute. We'll look at different forms of industrial dispute. We'll look into Factories Act of 1948. Above all, we'll try and have a look into Environment Protection Act of 1986 as well as Sale of Goods Act. And I think when it comes to business regulatory framework and industrial dispute, so what exactly is the context? According to Industrial Dispute Act of 1947, any dispute or difference between employers and employers, or between employers and workmen, or between workmen and workmen, which is connected with the employment or the terms of employment and conditions of employment of any person. So there is a diverse kind of a coverage of industrial dispute. Not only it is just restricted among two employers, not only between employers and employee, but also between two employees or workmen. So that is the coverage of Industrial Dispute Act of 1947. So when we talk about different forms of industrial disputes are there, and these are certain things which is very known and common to us. The first one we talk about strikes. The next one we know another form of industrial dispute is called lockouts. What do we mean by lockouts? It's a temporary shutdown of a place of business by the employer. And when we talk about Indian context, many a times we see all on a sudden a notice has been put up and the factory is shut down. So the next important point is Ghirao, which is also preventing entry or exit of managers or employers from a particular office. So what happens here? The employees try and gather there and try and prevent the managers or the employers from entering or making an exit from the office. So these are different forms of industrial dispute and strikes, Ghirao or lockouts and all. So when we talk about industry, there is a term which is very important for us to remember, which is called collective bargaining. What exactly, my dear student, is the meaning of this term collective bargaining? It is a process of negotiation between representative of management and workers. And why exactly is a negotiation? Because it is determining mutually agreed upon terms and conditions of work, which protect the interest of both worker and management. So to put it very simple, it is a negotiation that is happening with the idea to have mutually agreed upon terms and conditions of work. And mind you, it's not a win-lose situation. Both the parties, both the stakeholders should protect their interest. So which protect the interest of both the worker and the management when it comes to collective bargaining. The next important thing, we are talking about the Industrial Development Regulation Act of 1951. Now what exactly is it? It is an instrument in the hand of the government. Why? To control and direct private sector industrial investment with the help of industrial licensing system. I repeat once again, it is nothing but it is just an instrument in the hand of the government to control and direct private sector industrial investment with the help of industrial licensing system. So when we talk about this, I think the next important area we are going to cover is the Factories Act of 1948. So these are very relevant for us to understand as a would-be entrepreneur or maybe a student of management. Now what exactly is the Factories Act has to say about the concept of a factory? A factory happens to be any place where 10 or more persons are working and in which manufacturing process is carried on with the help of appropriate power, machinery and infrastructure. So if you look at the basic concept of a factory, so a place where 10 or more individuals are working, and obviously it is happening some kind of a manufacturing process, and there got to be utilization of power, machinery and proper infrastructure. So that is what the factories has to say about factory. My dear students, we need to just pause for a minute and try and look at the distinction between what is manufacturing versus production and operations. So how do we look at the concept of manufacturing vis-a-vis the concept of production and operations? Now, manufacturing refers to the process of producing only tangible goods. But we have come a long way. In our society, we not only have only tangible goods, but a lot of services are nowadays being marketed. So when we talk about production or operation, it is used to refer to the process of creating both tangible goods as well as services which are intangible. So try and have a look. We have come a long way from the days of manufacturing where there used to be only tangible goods to the concept of production and operations where we are having both tangible goods as well as services. Say for example, the tangible goods may be a mobile handset, and when it comes to services, we talk about maybe the hospitality sector, a hotel chain like maybe the Taj or maybe the Hyatt or ITC Shonar. So these are also there. So when we talk about production or manufacturing, what exactly is the concept? Now see, production happens to be a process which involves the conversion of raw materials and bought out components into finished product for sale. Now when we talk about manufacturing and production, means there is a conversion happening. A set of raw material as well as other inputs are getting converted and transformed into some kind of a finished product. And end of the day, that finished product is going to serve the satisfaction of the customer. So the utility or added value is the difference between the value of the output and the value of the input. If you take an example, the raw materials or maybe some kind of inputs is of no value to the final consumer. But once those are properly transformed, these are properly going through a transformation and conversion system and eventually becoming finished product. So the consumers are going to accept it. So this is the best part of it. So when we talk about it, the value addition to the input is brought about by alteration. There are transportation, there are storage or preservation, and above all quality assurance. So this is actually creating utility in the mind of you and me, the consumers. So when we talk about the Factories Act of 1948, there are certain kind of guidelines. And if you look, there are certain important points which we as an entrepreneur or maybe as a student of entrepreneurship and office management should remember. Employment of children is prohibited up to the age of 13 years. Now, how is the hour of work for children? Now, as per the Factories Act, it is 4 hours per day. Now, for age group between 14 to 17 years. And mind you, there should not be any night shift for the children. When it comes to the ladies or the women, we talk about they are not allowed to work from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. in factories as per the Factories Act of 1948. When it comes to how is the working day like, so it will be 8 hours a day and 48 hours a week. So these are very, very important points for us to remember. So what other important aspect we need to remember? We need to focus about cleanness in our factory. Someday you are starting some kind of a business on your own. You have to provide adequate ventilation and have a sufficient temperature control. There should be adequate kind of lighting facility. And I think we'll try and just talk about a famous experiment here that was conducted by Elton Mayo, which was trying to measure some kind of impact of lighting on productivity. And I think this is what a very important finding we are talking here. So how exactly lighting you need to take care in your factory? What about the facility for drinking water for your workers, your employees and all? What about something like maybe the safety provision? There are a lot of machineries, there are a lot of maybe employees who are workers who are working on those machineries. So basic safety provision when it comes to maybe some kind of hazardous substances, maybe some kind of gases and all. So how probably you are going to protect your employee? Some kind of safety devices and all are very important. Welfare provision nowadays is also very important. You have to give them sufficient kind of a welfare provision. When it comes to maybe first aid, we talk about washing, storing and drying of different kind of clothes and all. So these are all what is there in the Factories Act of 1948. So as a student of entrepreneurship development, we should remember all this. The most important thing in today's context is about environment protection. And there is the Environment Protection Rules of 1986. The central government has made a set of rules. Now, first and foremost is about standards for emission or discharge of environmental pollutants. So this is something which all of us should need to take note of. prohibition and restriction on location of industries. And I think if you know, there is a place in Kolkata which is called Topshia, and there used to be a lot of tanneries and all those things. But now these people have been asked to shift to a new thing called Bantola leather complex, which has come up in West Bengal. So this is what we are saying: prohibition and restriction on the location of industry. So certain industries which might have caused some kind of a problem and pollution to the environment, it need to be relocated. So as an entrepreneur, you need to understand this. Prohibition and restrictions on handling hazardous substances and submission of environment statement is often very, very important. So when we talk about this, I think the next important area we move on from environment is the Sale of Goods Act of 1930. So when we talk about the Sale of Goods Act, we need to know what exactly is the term good means. It includes every kind of movable property except auctionable claims. It talks about except money, and goods may be classified into three types. The first one is existing goods. What do we mean by existing goods? Already these are in existence and which are physically present in some person's possession and ownership. The second category of goods we talk about is called the future goods. So if you talk about an existing good, it is already in existence. But when we talk about the concept of a future goods, it is not in existence. What exactly is the interpretation? Let's try and understand. This is something which will be manufactured or produced or acquired by the seller after making of the contract of sale. So what is the basic difference between an existing good and a future good? The future good is going to come into existence after making the contract of sale, which may be manufactured, which may be produced or acquired by the seller. The third category of goods we talk about the responsibility of production and operations manager. If you talk about a factory, if you talk about an industry where hardcore production and manufacturing process is going on, there got to be certain important responsibilities. So we normally say these are the 5 P's. Each one of these responsibilities starts with a P. The first one is called the responsibility of the manager, production manager, when it comes to product. What exactly will be the product that will be manufactured? Second responsibility relates to the plant, the factory where the manufacturing process is going on. The third one talks about process. What exactly will be the process by virtue of which a set of inputs will getting converted into a set of finished product or output, which will enjoy utility in the mind of the consumer in the market. The next one is we talk about programs, and the fifth one is called people. So when we talk about the Sale of Goods Act, my dear students, once again, after looking into existing goods and future goods, we come to the third type of goods, which is called contingent goods. These may be a contract for sale of goods, the acquisition of which by the seller depends upon a contingency, which may or may not happen. And this is as per section 6 subsection 2. So when we talk about contingent goods, there may be a contract for sale of goods, the acquisition of which, I repeat once again, the acquisition of which by the seller depends upon a contingency, which may or may not happen. So this is something interesting when we talk about the third category of good. As per the Sales of Goods Act of 1930, there are certain kind of right to resell. So when probably the goods are of perishable nature, so then only we can think about resell, the right to resell. Price, what are the conditions when probably we have the right to resell? The first one, obviously, when the goods are of perishable nature. The next one, price not paid within a reasonable time after notice of intention to resell has been served. Suppose the notice for intention to resell has been served, but somehow the price is not paid. So then probably there is a chance of right to resell as per the Sales of Goods Act of 1930. Right to resell is expressly reserved in the contract. This is another important criteria when we talk about the Sales of Goods Act. Condition and warranty are two terms as a student we need to understand. So when we talk about, when we are referring to the Sale of Goods Act of 1930, we are hearing terms like conditions and warranty. What exactly is it? A stipulation in the contract of sale of goods may be a condition or a warranty. Now what is a condition? A condition is a stipulation essential to the main purpose of the contract, the breach of which gives the aggrieved party a right to treat the contract as repudiated. So this is very interesting for us to understand, because these two terms we are going to find it everywhere when it comes to the Sale of Goods Act of 1930. So when we talk about a warranty part of it, what exactly is the difference? A warranty, on the other hand, is a stipulation which is collateral to the main purpose of the contract, the breach of which gives the aggrieved party a right to claim for damages. So if you are an aggrieved party and if you have studied the Sales of Goods Act, you will be in a position the right to claim for damages and not a right to reject the goods and treat the contract as rejected. So when we talk about this, I think, my dear students, in today's session we tried to have an idea about what exactly is the concept of entrepreneurship, what exactly is the concept of business regulatory framework, and what exactly is the concept and provisions among the responsibility of a production manager in the factory. So basically today's session we tried to have a look into the Factories Act, we had a coverage about the Environment Protection Act, we spoke about the Sale of Goods Act, and we heard about terms like condition and warranty. And I think in future when we meet, we'll talk about something else. So thanks for the time being, and thanks once again for being with me.